Hello, and welcome to our panel on the future of luxury travel. I'm Mathew Evins, Chairman of Evins Communications and an ILHA board member, and the moderator of today's panel. Before we begin, I would like to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves because they can do it far more eloquently than I can. Albert?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Albert Herrera. I'm the Senior Vice President for Partnerships for Virtuoso, and I'm based in New York City. Thank you.
David?
I'm David Israel. I'm a Senior Vice President for Hotel Asset Value Enhancement, Hotel Ave, based between New York and Miami.
Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Walker, President and CEO of JetLinks Aviation in Omaha, Nebraska.
Joanne?
Hi, I'm Joanne Kurtz-Allers. I'm based in Southern California. I'm the owner of Hidden Doorways, a representation and marketing firm.
And Ruth Ann?
Hello, I'm Ruth Ann Chirero. I'm the Vice President, Editorial Director of Luxury Travel Advisor Magazine and Travel Agent Magazine, which is part of the QuestX Media Group.
Thank you. So before we get into our conversation today, let me begin with a brief introduction. Coming into 2020, luxury travel was poised to have the most successful year on record, experiencing double-digit growth in almost all sectors. But the global pandemic brought the world to a halt and decimated the luxury travel industry. Thankfully, luxury travel is beginning to rise from the ashes and is experiencing growing demand because of COVID fatigue, the pent-up desire to get away or to work remotely from afar. And for affluent travelers, the more remote and sustainable the destination, the better. However, these affluent travelers have become more discerning and more demanding. They have higher expectations, but they will gladly pay for it if those expectations are met. Let's quickly go over some of the numbers because I think they will help frame our conversation today. In 2009, there were 62 million people around the world that were employed as part of the global luxury travel ecosystem. $1.41 trillion was spent on global luxury airfares and lodging alone. The global luxury travel ecosystem, excluding lodging and airfares, amounted to $1.54 trillion. So the global luxury travel universe amounted to a total of $2.05 trillion. High net worth individuals, which fundamentally encompasses 22.8 million people worth more than $1 million each, are really defined as the archetypical luxury travelers. They contribute $94 trillion of the $1.54 trillion to the global luxury travel ecosystem. They spent $507.6 billion on global luxury airfares and lodging. 73% are planning to stick closer to home. They don't want to take unnecessary health risks, and taking road trips to escape until destinations open up and are deemed to be safe from a health perspective. Most high net worth individuals are wary of staying at home and desirous of going to far-flung destinations as soon as they're safe and they can get there safely. High net worth individuals are opting for yachts, private aviation, villas, and are willing to spend the money if it buys them safety and it buys them peace of mind. Few observations. What affluent travelers want today, and it's a reflection of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're in the midst of, they're looking for authenticity and experience. They want controlled privacy and self-sufficiency. They want peace of mind and safety, but they also want sustainability and well-being. They want to be able to connect. They want to have mindful travel. They look to luxury travel for meaning, for purpose, and a sense of connection with other countries, cultures, and peoples. They want to engage, inspire, and nourish their intellect and their spirit. 75% are looking to travel with family or friends in what we have come to know as pod travel. They want to fix the mental and physical and spiritual damage caused by COVID, and they seek places to rejuvenate their physical and mental well-being. In terms of personalization, which is challenging in a COVID environment, the question becomes, in a contactless world, luxury travel must become hyper-personal, with far more options for guests to design their own stay and to tell properties how they want to be looked after. The whole concept of privacy is really becoming the new luxury. Private jets and yachts, private islands and private resorts, service residences and villas. These modes and types of luxury travel will boom as high net worth individuals look for getaways with fewer crowds, more privacy, and the ability to engage while socially distanced. Luxury travelers long to experience something unique and personal while retreating to sustainable havens of rarity, purity, and quiet. Part of luxury travel, however, will always remain, for lack of a better word, thoughtfulness. When a luxury travel provider can demonstrate that it's thinking about you and curating the perfect personal experience just for you, in many ways, that represents luxury redefined. In terms of travel advisors, they will become an indispensable part of the new luxury, as travelers are going to need more expert help and guidance than ever before. Trust and transparency are critical in today's environment. Explaining what a guest can expect at a luxury property is absolutely essential. Affluent travelers look beyond price and seek out those who have earned their trust and provide service excellence. What we're also seeing is that high net worth travelers will spend more, they'll stay longer if the experience meets their elevated expectations. So when we look at this landscape, we have a couple of other points that I think are worth mentioning at this time. High net worth travelers still want more from their future travels. They'll want them to be more thoughtful, more meaningful, and purposeful, in addition to being safe and sustainable. Luxury travel will now be about balancing safety with a satisfying guest experience, and the affluent traveler's expectations will be higher than ever before. But what will the industry look like once the world starts moving again? How do we define luxury when a high-touch business meets a no-touch world? And what is the future of luxury travel? Well, that is what our esteemed panelists will now tell us. So the first question I would like to ask each of you is the following. Will luxury travel recover from COVID-19 pandemic? And if so, how long do you think it's going to take? And if I may, let me start with Ruth Ann.
Thank you, Matthew. I think luxury travel will come back quickly, especially with the news that we've been getting for the past few weeks and recently as well. What I have been hearing is that luxury travelers, and just echoing some of the things you've said, are jumping out of their windows to get somewhere. They cannot wait to get back. So it's going to come back quickly. Luxury does tend to come back quickly because those travelers can protect themselves in ways that are really super important now. They've always wanted the privacy, the space, to avoid the obvious problems that come about when traveling, but they'll want to, have those safeguards up even more so. So I would say with the recent news with the vaccine, we'll see it come back next year, and we'll have a portion of the population going right away. We'll have those others kind of waiting to see how it all pans out. And then most of us, I think, will be in between, but we'll see it come back next year, probably after the second quarter or so.
Albert, what's your perspective?
Thank you. To tie in with what Ruth Ann just mentioned is luxury travel will return. It definitely will. And Matthew, based on our conversations before, I always use this phrase, pent-up emotion. And there is a lot of that. It's along with pent-up demand, of course, because the ultra high net worth individuals have the money, They have the resources. To them, it's being able to get away. So that definitely will be the first to return. The question is where can they go to? What's the availability? Because we know, for example, Virtuoso, we have a website that you can't really book anything. Virtuoso is that, because everything we all the information we take goes to a travel advisor. We refer them to a travel advisor. Since the election, since the announcement of a vaccine, our usage, our interests have jumped up. The requests to advisors have jumped up about 150,000 requests in the last 2 weeks. So it shows you that people want to get away and are planning for that day. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Jamie, what's your take?
So from a private aviation perspective, we've already seen a tremendous rebound. So we've always considered ourselves a leading indicator in the luxury travel space. By comparison, we were as far off as 85, 90% back in April for our activity from our clients. We're now back to only 10% off year-over-year numbers. So we're seeing a tremendous rebound from our clientele when it comes to both leisure as well as business travel. So as a company that is on one of the leading indicators in luxury travel, we've already seen the rebound. Now it's just transcending to some of the other speakers on this call today.
Joanne?
Well, to echo everybody else, and to Jamie's point, we're seeing the rebound already. When I look at some of our properties, both domestic and international, domestically, we have a ranch in Wyoming, and they're 150% up in bookings going into the year, way ahead of any year they've ever had. Some of that is being driven by celebrations, a lot of wedding business, people that had to put off weddings and other family celebrations. So I think that will lead the way. I think honeymoons will lead the way. But we saw the minute something opened up, like for instance, Tahiti, we were booking Tahiti and starting in June, people were like, oh my God, we can go somewhere. And of course, the protocols for getting on the plane, the COVID testing that you had to have, what the hotels had to do to accept guests was super strict. And it gave people the confidence to get on those planes. And we're seeing a lot of booking for Europe for the summer. So it's very exciting to see it already.
And David, you see this from multiple different perspectives. What are you seeing?
So I think it's a very different discussion, whether we're talking about urban markets or we're talking about leisure destinations. I think the leisure destinations are recovering very quickly, especially those in the drive-to market or those with, easy access to private aviation. The urban markets are a little bit trickier in the sense that they are very much tied to two factors that don't exist elsewhere. One is the other tourist attractions, take New York, Broadway and the museums and until the cultural destinations fully reopen, you're not going to see as much of that travel. Similarly, there is a whole segment, which I know we'll talk about later, that's luxury business travel, which fills and supplements a lot of the urban properties, as well as luxury groups, high-end board meetings, and that sort of demand. I think that sort of demand, it's likely end of 21, if not 22, before you begin to see that starting. The social-driven gatherings, once gathering sizes are up, I think early to mid-summer, I think we're going to begin to see that really come back. On a whole, luxury travel should recover and luxury hotel RevPAR should recover quicker than other segments, assuming the luxury hotels are willing and able to hold their rate, which they were in the prior downturn. The demand will come back quickly and more feverishly than it will in the other segments. Because as Albert and others have said, there's a significant amount of pent-up emotion and demand for travel to come back very quickly.
So that brings us to our next question, which is, what must luxury travel do to recover and transform adversity into opportunity? Albert, you deal with this every day. What do we need? What do we need to do?
You sort of mentioned, you touched on this earlier, Mathew, in terms of trust is one thing, right? If you are in this space, especially when you're dealing with the clients that we all have, it's about trust and being transparent about any transaction you do. We've talked about flexibility as well. We know with the changing policies around the world or even locally, that a partner, an advisor, a consumer, the consumer expects a lot, and the advisor must know a lot. So all these things that come into play in terms of how the world, our space, is changing. Expertise is another thing. No one is an expert in everything, right? So you have to be trusting of the people you work with a very good network of people, of advisors that know where to go, where you could, get the latest testings or whatever it may be that is available to you. And more importantly, for hotels out there as well, is adapting to the changing needs of the consumer, which vary from obviously basic health and hygiene right now. That's the most important, to space, to offerings, to, I'm paying top dollar. I still want to make sure that my room is still kept clean at the end of the day, right? At one time, I remember there were people who were looking like, we'll only do turn down once a day or once a week on request. We're learning that, guess what? The clients are paying top dollar. They want their rooms cleaned twice a day. Give me more sheets, so to speak, right? Bring me more linens, kind of thing. So all these things, we call them nuances, but really expectations are just coming up. So, I can go down the list, but we have other panelists here, so I'll leave it to them to fill in as well. Thank you.
So, Joanne, you're dealing with this every day with your properties. What are they seeing, and what are you hearing from them in terms of what they're doing to recover? And how are you advising them that they need to transform for the future?
Well, as you and Albert both touched on, transparency is crucial, and people want to know everything about the property. They want to know about the employees and their comings and goings and the cleaning protocols and all of that. But beyond that, they also want to be inspired to travel. So in terms of what experiences there are in those properties and what individual experiences there are that can be communicated. Because the thing is, in the past, when you go on a lot of hotel sites and you see book now, but there's no information of why I would go there. And I think people are going to be much more thoughtful about the properties they pick. And I think the properties need to really communicate what they're creating and what they're creating in an individual way. And also the flexibility to, in the past, there was a lot of restriction on how many nights you had to stay and when you could cancel and deposits due way in advance. And I think that people obviously have a lot of fear. And as hoteliers, we also create seamless experiences and seamless ways of booking that people know that they can, if something happens, they have a way out. They're not liable. And, even though it's difficult as a hotel to manage that way, it also gives people ease of mind to be able to book.
David, what are you advising your clients?
I think we're very much seeing the trip planning, as Joanne and Albert have alluded to, is becoming even more important, right? People are not necessarily just booking a room for luxury, and the pre-arrival surveys are no longer enough, right? We're encouraging all of our hotels to call directly, talk to every guest, and hotels are in some way becoming a lot more like cruise ships in the sense that everyone's planning what they're doing much further in advance. There's a little bit less whimsicality, but you need to provide the guest, right, options and solutions of ways to make their trip better and educate them of your protocols. And we're seeing a lot more engagement both pre and on property. We've had to ramp up our technology and our reservation departments within the assets, to enable more FaceTime interaction or WhatsApp communication, so that there's a much more real-time communication from a digital perspective with the guest. I think they're very much yearning for that luxury experience, and the hotels that have pulled back and have gotten rid of, to Albert's point, too many of the amenities have seen real pushback. People, coming into the first couple of weeks of the reopening over the summer, everyone anticipated the guest would say, "I don't want my sheets cleaned." Right? In the first month, I think Four Seasons was assuming 30 or 40% of their guests would opt in for housekeeping. It was 80 or 90 in that first month, and we're also seeing our hotels, desire to be ahead of the guest and be proactive and making sure that there's extra towels in the room and being open and transparent with the guest early on, of asking them how they want the staff to engage with them, right? Do you want us to come and turn down your room? Are there things that we can proactively leave outside your room if you don't want to interact, right? How do you want to interact in the food and beverage environment? I think knowledge is power today. The more we ask the guest, the more comfortable they feel. And I think that, to me, is the most important thing as we move towards luxury, towards the future of luxury. Is I think that level of transparency and knowledge is going to be key. And the more we know about the guest, the better level of service and experience we can offer. But candidly, that's also the more money we can charge, right? Because the more of a differentiated experience we can provide, the more somebody's willing to pay for it.
So to that point, Jamie, your company is known for that level of intimate personalization. What are you hearing from your Jet Card members and from your owners about the return of luxury travel and what it's going to take to make it really thrive in the future?
They're looking for a lot of creativity from us. One of the things that we began doing pre-pandemic, but really put a lot of energy in during the pandemic, is creating a preferred hotels program, where we can literally, we call it plane to pillow, where we can help them in a very controlled environment protect their health and wellness. They already trust us. Albert picked up on that from how he made it clear. They trust us in the relationship that we have with them. We've done a number of protocols to protect our health and wellness. We've partnered with companies like BioProtect to treat our private terminals with disinfectant up to 90 days. So we're doing all those things to get creative and help keep that confidence and that trust that our clients had with us pre-pandemic, but then extending it to partners that help us create the need for travel. So by having these preferred hotel partners, we have a contact that's made with the GM of that hotel that is of interest, by literally hand-holding it from a JetLinks experience with that hotel and connecting with that local GM and getting them, our client, comfortable with all the protocols that those hotels have put in place. It just kind of extends that trust and that confidence that our clients need to feel comfortable getting back on an airplane and going to all these wonderful places that they had traveled to previously, both leisure and business. I'd say, to sum it up, we've been forced to be much more creative to keep that trust and that confidence alive, and continue to give reason for travel through different initiatives that we have put.
Now, Ruth Ann, you hear it from a myriad of resources in the industry, from luxury travel advisors to hotel general managers and managing directors to owners. What are you hearing from them in terms of how they believe luxury travel needs to transform to be successful, even more successful in the future?
Well, if you think about it, on the ultra luxury side, it's already going in that direction, right? And so there's always been a very strong respect for the guest, a lot of space, cleanliness. I mean, it speaks to all the things that the traveler is hyper conscious about right now. What I'm forecasting is a return to a more formal luxury of days past, not the tuxedo serving caviar in the restaurant, but more of a distance between the hotel, the supplier, and the guest. So it's not, that casual, hey, how you doing, or whatever. The guest is going to want to know that the hotel and the people in the hotels are hyper vigilant about hygiene protocol, safety protocol, distancing, etc. And so, as I said, I'm forecasting that luxury will indeed go back to a more formal status, and we'll just see much less of people kind of being more casual with the guest and sort of relating to them in a more casual nature. There's just going to have to be that distance for at least for a few months, so that the guest is super comfortable that the hotel is not relaxing in any manner, because they want to be sure that they're totally safe in every way possible.
So that brings us to a question which I think I've heard from a lot of people in the industry is one of the biggest challenges, which is luxury hospitality is a high touch business. How do we deliver a high-touch experience in a contactless environment, and do it with meaning, with consequence, in a way that will be truly memorable? Because this is going to require a lot of rethinking, a lot of innovation, and a lot of, to your point, Ruth Ann, going back to possibly some more formal luxury. David, what's your sense on high touch and how we facilitate it in a contactless world?
I think technology is one of the things that's going to be here to stay. I think the use of the ability to communicate in a formal and an informal fashion with the guests is here to stay. I think anything that can improve the guest experience are the, I would say, new COVID enhancements that will continue. I think there will be, as I pointed out earlier, I think there's actually going to be more interaction directly with the guest. I question whether traditional concierge is actually going to disappear, and whether most of that's actually going to be done, through some in-room communication, right? Or even on their way, in a vehicle to the hotel, right? Via FaceTime or some other form, or Kipsu. I think while on property, the consumer is going to continue to tell us what they want. In the COVID world, they've been telling us what they're comfortable with, and I think the individual chit on each traveler is going to be a lot more robust. And I think as hoteliers, we're going to need to be a lot more prepared to service that. I think partnerships are going to be a lot more authentic than some of the kind of recent ones we've seen on the asset levels that have been a little bit more contrived. I think you're going to see a lot more experience planning, because I think that's a trend that doesn't always require contact. I think verbal and other understanding of our demographics is a way to really co-market and partner with companies that individuals resonate with. I think there's a lot more from a CRM perspective as an industry that we're going to improve on coming out of this. And I do think technology is going to play a big role in that. But in doing that, it's going to arm the staff to be able to provide better service and more customized service.
Now, Jamie, your business is an ultra high touch business. How have you been doing it from the time that COVID started till now? And how are you going to do it going forward in the future that, that makes that high touch element, it overcomes the contactless aspect that we're all dealing with today?
So high touch has really become more touchless. Our clients are all looking for the distances that everybody has mentioned here, the social distancing and the masks and all the things that make our clients more comfortable. And an example I would give, we had a business meeting here in Omaha, where I'm headquartered, with a group out of New York just last week. I think the only door handle that was touched by that visitor was maybe when they left their place in New York, because when they arrived at our private terminal at Teterboro Airport, both the front door and the back door to our private terminal were open, so he didn't have to touch that. He walked right onto the airplane. He sat in the airplane. When he got off in Omaha, he went through the private terminal on the other side with both doors open. There's a driver there waiting with the door open to the car. There's a lot of touchlessness that we put into our model today that didn't previously exist. So I think the high touch has frankly been turned into a touchless experience. And that social distancing that's been built in, where our flight concierge, they give a 10-foot distance when they're visiting with our clients, when they're coming through those private terminals, versus before it was a very intimate meet and greet and just a totally different experience. So I would answer the question that high touch has become more about touchless.
Okay. Ruth Ann, what are you hearing?
I think that the traveler is going to be much more demanding of suppliers, as you guys have already stated. I think there will be much less tolerance. So, we've all traveled, we see things. I hear now that the planes are quite totally cleaner than ever would have been believed, but we will not tolerate anything that we see anymore. So if you pull down a tray, if you're in coach, it's not a luxury conversation. If you see things that just aren't clean, people are just going to call attention to it right away. At a hotel, if they see someone, whatever, maybe a staff member not wearing a mask, or food being, circulated by people in a way that's just not cool, I think they will definitely be vigilant and call attention to it. And I'll think that they will be calling out suppliers whenever there's some kind of transgression towards something like this. And so it might just be temporary, but we've just been too vigilant for too long. And to go to a luxury hotel or have an experience where someone is suddenly just lapsing and you're putting yourself at risk is just not going to fly.
And Joanne, in the new normal, how are your properties delivering that high touch experience contactlessly or touchlessly?
Well, a few things. First of all, there's so much that can be done even on the phone with emotion. And an example of that is in June, I stayed in my first hotel, and it was the Malibu Beach Inn, and there was no, everything was pre-checked in and very little interaction with any of the staff. But every time I called down to just ask a simple question, the emotion that came across on the phone was so amazing. The care and the concern and, how are you? And thank you for staying. And it was amazing. It was such small things that were asked, but yet the emotion that came through was very powerful. As David mentioned earlier, all of the communication of asking people things that we've never asked before, Are they going to be working out in the gym? What time do they want to be working out in the gym? So the amount of people in the gym could be managed, the amount of information that can be acquired. And then the key is delivering on the information in a personal way. And if it's someone's celebration or anniversary, whatever, the recognition of that doesn't need a lot of touch, but generates a lot of emotion and touch. And lastly, on the technology front, which I'm not the expert on technology, but someone I know was recently in Rwanda, which is one of the places we can travel to. And the technology they had at the airport, the temperature check was delivered to the hotel they were staying. All the results of that were immediately communicated in the destination they were staying in, and they were just blown away. And that was a touchless, but a very personal, experience. So I see a lot more of that, and it's very exciting.
Albert, when you think Virtuoso, you think immediately the standard of high touch, whether it's your travel advisors, whether it's the hotels that are part of Virtuoso. How are they dealing with it? And how do you see that evolving in the future?
Oh, wow. That is, where do I start, Matthew, with this? It is evolving for sure. It's really getting to know your client, getting to know what appeals to them, what is important to them, and more importantly, getting to listen to them as well, right? We talk about the whole touchless thing, and that's the norm. That's how we deal with the world we are in right now. But it's about consistency as well and seamless delivery of this. For example, in hotels around the world, what is the one thing, remember my hotel background, a mystery shop report is first thing they see is that smile on your face, right? When you arrive in a hotel. Well, guess what? You can't see the smile of the front desk or the bellman's face because of this branded mask or whatever it may be that they're wearing. So how do you convey that warm welcome message? And the same thing goes to what Joanne said about being able to deliver that when you're talking to someone on the phone or via an online app as well. There is that sort of warm connection that we need to sort of bring to our guests from the get-go, even before, obviously, they arrive at the hotel. And consistency is a big thing here as well. Because if you, like one of our advisors, are booking a hotel or a resort wherever in the world, those travelers are savvy. They will expect the same kind of service standards in another hotel, hence the consistency aspect of it, right? Because how many times have you said, oh, we're only doing QR codes in a restaurant, and then you go to another dining outlet in that same hotel, it's a menu. So all these consistencies that need to be provided across an establishment or establishments. There's also a little detail that raises the bar, because our industry is always about raising the bar. I was in a hotel recently in Mexico in August, and what is the one thing you get into once you get into the restaurant, you take your mask off, right? Because you're allowed to take your mask off once you're seated to order. And there was this great hotel. I put my mask on the table, and the first thing they give you is a little cellophane bag. I'm like, what's this for? Didn't realize it. That's where you put your mask in. I mean, I have not seen that ever delivered at any other place here in the United States. But that to me was very clever and very thoughtful and very, I guess you might say, proactive, right? So things like that keep raising the bar in this luxury segment of the business that we all deal with.
Okay, and Albert, that brings us to the next, I think, logical question, because we've talked about all of the various service providers, operators in the luxury travel world. But now let's talk about the traveler. And obviously that traveler, and you've all mentioned it, is going to be more demanding, is going to expect more. And how do you see that traveler? What are those expectations? What are they looking for on a de minimis basis from the luxury travel operators and service providers that they are dealing with? What's that standard that they expect, and how do they meet those expectations? And Albert, I'd like to start with you on this one because it's really an extension of what you were just talking about.
It's easy answer, but not so easy, really. It's about give it to me, make it available, because I'm not able to. I'd like to plan ahead, but I can't plan ahead. Make sure I have that availability, and I want to be as flexible as possible. It's not all easy when you're trying to run a profitable establishment, as we know that, David, right? Because obviously that's why you have certain minimums and certain thresholds that a hotel or a resort have to abide by. However, there are pluses to that as well, because we know of so many clients of ours that have checked into a hotel or a resort, and all their 7-day journey has just become extended to a 3-month trip kind of thing, hence the flexibility. Also, one thing as well is, planning ahead as well, is that this inventory, that the best inventory that for this ultra high net worth individuals won't be there forever. It's going to go, and it's going to go at a premium because people want it. I mean, we know, for example, that Regent sold out their 2023 around the world cruise in 3 days at full segments of 75 days a segment kind of thing, right? That's incredible. So these bucket list item thing, it's real, because people, when people will be able to book it, they want to book it now, and they'll want to make sure that they have it available for them in the long term and in the short term as well. There will be, obviously, for larger families, people traveling in larger groups. When I say groups, it's your extended family or friends. People will want that, and they want to have that availability and that flexibility and that information all at their fingertips. So that's why I said there's a lot. It's an easy question, but it's not an easy question to address as well, Matthew.
Now, Jamie, you deal with some of the most discerning, demanding individuals in the luxury travel space. How are you seeing that evolve in an era of COVID, and what do you think is going to happen in terms of what that client is looking for from you post-COVID?
We've actually seen, quite frankly, a more tempered approach by our client. The demands are still there, but it's being met with a sense of understanding that maybe wasn't appreciated prior to the pandemic. And in terms of all the things that we are doing now that we weren't doing previously are being appreciated maybe in a different way than they would have been pre-pandemic. So the health and wellness aspect of travel has really, I'd say, transcended everything else. And we found that although there's still supply in our segment of the market, as I mentioned, our industry and our company is still 10% off year-over-year numbers. There's still supply in the marketplace, but we haven't seen any movement on pricing. And we do have some in our space that have moved on prices and have lowered their prices. But what we found is that's not what the consumer is looking for today. They're looking for that confidence and trust that allows them to feel comfortable that their health and wellness is being taken care of. And again, it's being met with, I don't know if the word is patience or appreciation or what it might be, but we're finding a very different approach from our clients in terms of meeting their expectation because of the current pandemic and appreciation for the services we do offer during a time like this. So in a very, I guess, different way, we're seeing a behavior from our client that is much more appreciative of the services that we provide.
Okay, that's interesting. Joanne, are you seeing the same thing in terms of the clientele that are going to your properties? What are you seeing that's similar versus what's different?
Well, I think that how people are looking at hotels is different, and what they expect the hotel to provide is different based on all the changes. An example would be, we had someone looking to go to a property in a very expensive villa, and worked with a top travel advisor, and they basically needed to know that they could have 7 devices going in every room in the villa. And we had to create a Zoom call with the technology department, with the client itself, and they went room to room with 7 devices, knowing that there was enough Wi-Fi, because they were planning a long stay. They were having a teacher, a nanny, 2 people that own businesses that were running the business. And we did all that. They ended up booking, and they ended up even staying a little longer. So I think an opportunity for everyone that is running a hotel is, if you do provide what people need, because people can work remotely and learn remotely, etc., then they will also stay longer. And we're seeing that in many, many cases. So I think that's a great opportunity for everyone.
Indeed it is. David, your take.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what everyone has been saying in terms of, planning and setting the hotels up. From what we've seen, the guest is willing to pay significant premiums for experiences, right? And using spa and wellness as a perfect example, right? They're willing to pay a real premium over what they were paying previously to know that they have, a dedicated time in relaxation rooms, and that, that there's not a, 30-minute time period in between, that they have time and space for the room to be sanitized correctly, and more planning around that. As Joanne has mentioned, I think the technology piece continues to be a huge focus, right? From television upgrades to Wi-Fi upgrades, people want to feel comfortable that they can be there for extended lengths of time. Decamping is a new trend, and work from home, is not going to go away. I think you're going to see more luxury travelers, live in more than one destination and be in different destinations for 2, 3, 4 months at a time. I do think that is something here to stay. And I think we've seen in our more of our resorts that the guest is willing to pay for that additional touch, and knowing that, the staff has additional training and personalization. And to Albert's point, how do you differentiate when everyone has a mask on, and how do you make it personalized? And it's going back to the basics. And a lot of our hotels have invested in additional training, not just in how to communicate their safety and sanitation protocols, but also how to interact with the guests. And given the fact that a lot of the workforce today has never interacted in the way Ruth Ann was explaining, the more formalized luxury, and less casual, it's having to re-educate that sort of staff on how to be a little bit more formal, and how to interact in a hotel where the guest may have stronger views on, social distancing or masks or whatever it may be than you may have personally. So that and training that interpersonal empathy is something that has been a key priority for us across our portfolio.
Ruth Ann, what are you hearing from the travel advisors that you speak with and the hoteliers that you speak with in terms of how the guests' expectations and demands are changing and evolving?
The traveler is definitely more dependent on the advisor and on the hotels. And so there's just so much going on in the world right now that the traveler who has always been super confident and been able to really Google anything that they want about travel and be the experts, the guest is much more dependent on travel advisors and on the suppliers. There's so much going on in the world right now. They don't have the information to everything like they used to. The traveler is in recent years become so confident with knowing everything because they've Googled everything before they go to their advisor. They've seen the hotel. They know what the rooms look like, etc. However, they do not have all of the information anymore. And so, as has been stated already, the more communication that goes on with the hotel and the client, with the travel advisor and the client, if the client feels that they're being listened to and that they're being given a forum in which they can ask questions and that they are being asked about their preferences, they'll feel just much more comfortable.
So, to that point, and I think this is a logical progression. We have talked about the fact that the role of the travel advisor in an era of COVID is becoming so critical and so important. In many ways, it's a renaissance for the travel advisor in terms of the magnitude of the information that they have to convey. Ruth Ann, and this really is a function of, and I'd like to get your perspective and Albert's on this. What are you seeing in terms of the evolution of the role of the travel advisor? How do they feel about it? Are they prepared for it? And is the luxury traveler understanding that they have access to some of the finest resources there is?
I think travel advisors have certainly seen that over the past few months. Their clients are, as I said earlier, much more dependent on them, whether it was helping them get home, helping their kids get home as borders were closing, getting refunds, getting money back, getting things changed to next year, whatever it could be. We all know what went on. As the months progressed, clients were calling travel advisors just to talk. They knew they couldn't go anywhere, but they just wanted to talk to travel advisors about future trips, knowing they couldn't book them. And so the travel advisor in many cases became even closer to the client, which the top advisors were very smart about that. And they were also reaching out to their clients just to say, how are you? How are you doing? How is your family? Not to sell, but just to keep that relationship going. And so the relationship has changed dramatically in the sense that it's become much more symbiotic. The need to communicate the human touch, which, as Albert can speak to, of course, so well, it's that human touch that the travel advisor has always brought is there now. And going forward, travel advisors certainly are forecasting that the client will be even more dependent on them, again, for the reasons I've stated earlier. The people just don't know what's going on in the world. What are the rules? What's going to happen? What do I need? What will it be like when I go there? Again, things that they just can't Google.
And obviously, Albert, Virtuoso represents the best of the best when it comes to travel advisors. Do they understand that their role is becoming more important? Do they have the resources they need to meet the new responsibilities that they are inheriting right now? And do they feel that they are now in a unique situation to truly advise the luxury traveler in a way that they might not have been before COVID?
The answers to that would be yes, yes, no, and no. There's a lot of questions in that but that's a really good yes. I mean, the luxury advisors of today, if there's anything else that this pandemic has created, is it just confirmed that it is even more important to have a knowledgeable, experienced travel advisor, right? I remember going back a few years when the volcano eruption in Iceland and people didn't know how to get home from different flights and all that. That was nothing. think about what we're all going through today, right? In terms of navigating the landscape, so to speak. The best advisors have tools at their fingertips, but the most difficult part about this right now is information, the lack thereof. It was just mentioned earlier about information that it's not readily available, right? It may be a hotel, maybe a destination, whatever it may be, it is not readily available. You try figuring out how to get to a hotel in Tennessee from New York City. Not an easy one, right? Go to the CDC site, God help you. I don't understand what's required of me. The challenge we all have, like all of our businesses, is a travel advisor's time, expertise. They're all compensated based on the bookings that they have, based on what's materialized. There are some advisors that are getting great bookings for the now after those close to destinations, right? But for those that are actually making bookings in 2001, late 2001, 2002, 2003, those revenues are not being materialized until that time. So that's the hard part about the business that we're all in right now. It's only based on materialized. So what we are all doing for our industry, for the travel advisor, is how to help them be successful, how to help them maintain their incomes, so to speak. Because obviously we all know the challenges we have with the PPP money and all that stuff. I won't even go into that right now, but that's the world we live in. That's the reality. So our biggest concern is how do we make sure that we take care of the talent and retain the talent that we have in this industry of ours.
Joanne, picking up on what Albert had said in terms of bookings right now, how have you seen bookings change since COVID-19 began, and how do you think they'll change going forward in the future?
Well, just to comment on one thing Albert said, and then I'll answer that. As hoteliers, one of the things that I think is really important is to look at how commissions are paid, because a lot of hotels have delayed, payments as they would other, accounting procedures and processes. And I think it's an amazing time now to look at expediting commissions in a much quicker fashion than ever before, because the impact of doing that, and I've even Federal Express commissions that we've paid on behalf of our hotels just to get payments quicker into the hands of the agents. And the impact of doing that and creating loyalty for hotels, is amazing. And it's important because sometimes people work months and months and months on a booking or years, and then for a hotel to delay paying makes no sense, to have them, the travel agent, having to chase money to be paid. But back to the bookings. What we've seen is bookings are the length of stay. I did touch on that before, but we're seeing in general, if a property, let's say, has a 5-night average stay, it's turning into 7 nights. So the length of stay booking is increasing greatly. The amount of demand for villas is increasing all over the place. In fact, I wish I had more of those, but there are properties that are adding them as we speak because of noting that demand. And of course, everyone, I'm sure, is experiencing the fact that because of uncertainty, people are booking a lot shorter time frames than ever before. Bookings that used to be 3 months in advance are now, a week, days. People are getting so much last minute bookings because it is so, hard to plan in advance. But, that's the opportunity too for going into these months and all of a sudden having all this new business.
So, Jamie, again, picking up on what Joanne and Albert said, a two-part question. number one, are you seeing a difference in terms of the booking cycle from where we are today versus pre-COVID? But also, are you seeing a different kind of clientele that are now experiencing private aviation because of their concerns about commercial aviation? And what is that new clientele?
Absolutely. We've seen the exact same short booking window on the private jet side as well. So our call it 2,400 jet card members that we have nationwide went from, call it a 2-week booking pre-COVID to about a 72-hour booking in the COVID world. So they have been very apprehensive to set any certain travel plans, but we've seen that booking window start to increase again. It's gone from, call it 3 days to now about 5 days. So we're seeing some confidence come back from them in terms of living in this pandemic world and having some capability to control the schedule and not let the pandemic impact it as much as when we went into it. So we've absolutely seen a change in behavior when it comes to the booking window. When it comes to a different consumer coming into our space, we've seen, while our business is still off year over year, we've seen a jump of 30% in new clients. So new jet card members joining our program, call it post that May timeframe, we got into this 30% jump year over year in new jet card members. We haven't seen that kind of jump in the history of our 20-year business. We just don't see activity like that coming from a new consumer base. So part of that was led by a new program that we had launched where typically you join as a jet card member, you join and it's a 20-year agreement that has renewals annually, but it's a long-term agreement. We introduced a 90-day agreement in late March, early April, because we knew there's a consumer out there that may not think that they needed our solution long-term, but they certainly could use it short-term. So our new affiliate jet card, which is a 90-day jet card, is the reason for that jump in terms of new jet card members. So we're seeing a lot of the clients that we had previously called on that can certainly afford to travel this way, again, both for business and leisure, now traveling this way just to protect their health and wellness. And we've seen now that we've introduced that jet card, that 90-day jet card, over 90 days ago, we've started seeing people convert those short-term agreements into long-term agreements. So now that they're appreciating the conveniences and the safety and wellness that we can offer them, we're seeing them extend those 90-day agreements into those long-term agreements as well. So it's definitely changed the demographic of our clientele. We're seeing more people who would have otherwise maybe flown commercial first class, now flying private.
David, one of the things you and I have talked about in the past, and we keep hearing more and more, is the cost of luxury hospitality is going to go up and has gone up. What are you seeing in terms of your clients? How much more is it going to cost for luxury hotels to be able to provide the level of service that they need to provide in a COVID period of time? And are these increased costs something that we will see continuing to rise in the future?
So I think it's very much twofold, right? It's the increased costs of some of the sanitation and additional protocols. But the second big piece of it is the displaced revenue, right? So either through lack of demand or less demand or capacity constraints, or the fact that in order to provide a better luxury experience, we're actually spacing things out a lot more. So you're doing less, using the restaurant term, covers than you were before. And your hope is that you can get the average spend up to make up for that through better, higher ticket experiences. Overall, we've studied the average hotel in America is spending somewhere between $4 and $7 more per occupied room just to clean the room with the additional COVID standards, right? In the luxury space, that in many hotels is 50 to 100, right, per occupied room per night of what it's additionally costing us. I think the most important piece of this is the additional expense is not necessarily incremental. It's the fact that every day, in order to maintain our core staff that has built our business and enables us to exude the quality of service that we're providing, right, that expense is fixed. So regardless of whether our hotels are running 10% or they're running 70%, the customer and the traveler is expecting the same level of service, if not better. So we're having to get creative in reducing and centralizing some of the things behind the scenes that don't affect the guest experience. But I mean, I think our preliminary numbers are that, costs could be up anywhere between 15 and 20% to provide that level of luxury.
Is that on an annualized basis or one time?
I think it's annualized when you look at each individual guest and how it's going to work. With that said, the long-term owners have really looked at what that incremental cost is to carry the property and maintain that level of service versus what the long-term value and impact is. I know we led off by saying, one of the ways for luxury to get out of this quicker and faster is to maintain that rate integrity, right? The more somebody spends, the more they're going to expect. With that said, the more you're able to maintain your reputation and your clientele by providing the higher level of services, the more likely you are to be able to rebound quicker. So it's a short-term versus long-term mentality. Maintaining and holding on to our core staff and really surviving in the world of how do we lose less today versus make more is really where everybody is focused. Obviously, the challenge is all of this incremental service and reduced capacity comes at a pretty big expense, right? And there's a lot of hotels today that are pondering whether it makes more sense to not be open than provide services less than they feel are requisite to maintain their brand reputation. And I think, we saw a lot of hotels shut down earlier in the year. I think you're seeing in the urban markets plenty of hotels that may not reopen until, early spring. And certain hotels are actually taking advantage of this time to proactively renovate, knowing that, they need to provide a level of service publicly that's commensurate with their reputation and the rates that they charge. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jamie, as we've talked about also, private aviation used to represent the pinnacle of luxury travel, and now it seems to be becoming mainstream in luxury travel. How do you see the role of private aviation facilitating the recovery of luxury travel, and is that something that will continue in the future?
I do. We do. We don't see, as I had mentioned earlier, we see a new appreciation coming from our clients in terms of the services we provide, even those new clients who have just recently joined and have joined through those shorter term agreements, those 90-day agreements. So while it's reaching a larger audience due to the pandemic, we don't see post-pandemic world changing that. We think that while a number of our consumers could afford this and our new clients could afford this pre-pandemic, they didn't appreciate those services that were offered until they actually experienced them. So we see those new clients that we've gained due to the pandemic continue on with us post-pandemic, even when there's a vaccine out, even when travel has become quote unquote safe again from a health and wellness perspective. We don't see them exiting and going back to the commercial air travel solutions. We see them remaining on the private jet side of this equation, just due to their now new experience with the conveniences that a company like us can provide them.
So one of the last questions that I'd like to pose to all of you. When we think of the world of luxury travel, we think of the greatest assets in that world, which are the people. Whether they're the individuals who work in the hotels, whether they're the travel advisors who advise the clients. I don't think our industry has ever faced such a crisis of losing assets, the greatest assets that luxury travel has. What makes a luxury travel experience memorable and special? How do we mitigate this crisis? How do we make sure that these individuals are not lost to the luxury travel ecosystem because they play such a critical role, whether it's the individuals in the hotels or the travel advisors? Albert, let me start with you on that question, if I may.
This is a tough one for me to answer because obviously this is my career. This is my industry that we love, right? Leisure and hospitality make up 19% of the U.S. unemployment figure. That could be up in the last few weeks. I do not know, but that's what I have. In my hometown alone, here in New York City, and the surrounding area, the sector declined almost 44%, right? Which is staggering. And it's people that make this industry of ours, right? The service delivery, the detail, the passion, and just take it away from the big cities, the small villages in Africa, you name it, the list goes on. And we want to make sure that whatever we do is how do we protect this, the culture, the caring, the delivery, because this is something that we will need to look after the people that will help us carry through this and still will help us define what it means to be a pampered guest, a pampered traveler, you name it. I don't want to go political, but obviously the government isn't doing enough. I know we've been working with ASTA on trying to get some, just to rally up Congress and just to some approvals for our industry. They're doing it for some restaurants. But again, I think not enough is being done right now. And we don't want to lose the good people. And David touched on this earlier about obviously controlling costs and obviously how do you mitigate that by taking the hit in the short term versus the long term or vice versa. I don't think there really is a formula to that. But as long as when we make these long-term decisions, that we factor in the human element of this, because this human element is what's going to bring us through for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Ann, your perspective.
The role of the manager is going to become even more important. I mean, we all know a great managing director or general manager of a hotel inspires their team to deliver amazing service, thoughtful service. Well, now that has changed. They still need to do that, but they also need to really care for those team members who are still there, but who are suffering, who might have suffering within their family. It's just a very tough time for them. So I think just being even a better manager and pulling the team together and being supportive while you're also encouraging them to do a good job is even more important. I think agency owners and managers are in the same position. They are seeing their advisors have, in some cases, not all cases, their revenue drop dramatically. This is obviously a very difficult time. But agency owners who have really supported their team during this time are the ones that will hold on to their team going forward. I mean, we'll all get through this. Some agency owners and managers didn't necessarily do a great job, didn't communicate well, dropped off the face of the earth or whatever, and they may or may not survive. So again, just to echo it, it's management, leadership is more vital than ever.
Joanne, you've experienced all sides of the industry. What's your take?
Well, it runs the gamut, of course, and I have seen properties still paying staff even though they're closed, but obviously not everyone's in that position to be able to do that. But one thing about our industry is its resiliency, and I have seen so many agents do incredible things to create revenue, whether it's make masks that they put online that people can buy, whether it's take a part-time job at Instacart. I have seen people do amazing things, and I've also seen, and Ruth Ann, I think your luxury forum has been great for people to communicate and help each other. But I have seen so many people try to get people jobs, even in other industries, and communicate opportunities that people can do, for different amounts of time in their day. And I've also seen agents really embrace learning and spending the time, things that they couldn't do before, knowing the industry will come back, but spending their time preparing and learning about hotels and destinations and really getting knowledgeable on things that they never had time to prepare for. So, it doesn't answer the question of everyone and people out there, but I do believe that people that are in our industry will survive, and I do believe it'll come back quicker, and we will all be engaged again.
Jamie, you invest a lot of resources in your staff, your team, engagement, training. What's your feeling about this? This is a critical issue.
Well, while we've been very fortunate to have rebounded as well as we have in our segment of luxury travel, we did experience the hardships that everyone did initially, and we had to make some really tough decisions in April and furloughed a large number of our team members. We knew that we weren't going to recover to year-over-year numbers through the end of the year, so we had to make the hard decision to do a reduction in force. We came together as a team and actually created, and when I say team, all 500 plus employees, and developed a fund, a JetLinks fund that is not taxable income. It's not does not disrupt any sort of unemployment that a team member may be collecting. And we, within the month of April, raised $100,000 from just our 500 team members. Plus, we had a couple of our clients find out about it, and they had made donations as well. So we really came together as a company and tried to help one another through the hardships that various team members are experiencing. So we've done our best to keep the culture alive and keep that talent in place for that long term when it was called that April-May time period before we started to see any sort of rebound. But it is, to everyone's point, it's the most important part of this. It's the people. We can develop the best programs in the world, best pricing in the world, but if you don't have the best people in the world, the rest doesn't work. So we've been very sensitive to making sure that we allow the company to continue down its path while also taking care of our people. But it's a very delicate balance. It's a very hard thing to do. I would agree with Albert that not enough is being done by the federal government. The aid that we received through the CARES Act was a perfect amount of time for our company to rebound, but it did not satisfy this luxury space. It did not satisfy hospitality. A lot more needs to be done.
David, last word on this question.
I think it's equally as important to be engaging with your staff that is furloughed and unfortunately that were reduced. We've seen in certain markets where we were running 10, 15% occupancy, take New York as an example, and we spiked back up to 40 or 50 in October, right? The ability to call those employees in and keep them around has been crucial, right? And to Joanne's point, also helping them find supplemental sources of income, right? When, not just in the hotel industry, but in the restaurant industry, a lot of those individuals are aspiring artists, and they can't afford, because their secondary sources of income are no longer there either. So it's figuring out ways to maintain rapport with your staff, getting them the tools and resources, helping them navigate, unemployment and other forms of getting them paid, and keeping engaged with them, right? Understanding what's important to them, right? We have plenty of staff who didn't feel comfortable coming back to the hotels right away because they, for various family reasons, but staying engaged with them, and understanding what their families need, right? And how we can best set them up, getting them the appropriate online education or role play that we can get them through online, Zoom calls and industry learnings. It's not easy. And I think the hotels that are remaining engaged and are being good employers, I think are going to come out of this significantly stronger. AHLA and many other groups are fighting very, very hard to get us the support we need, hopefully, from the government. And my hope and dream is that there's something that's going to get these owners through, right? Because with the second lockdown looming, I think it's going to be tricky, right? Particularly in the urban markets, which really drive culture. We're petrified, candidly, that we're going to lose a lot of our core staff in the urban markets who they can't afford to remain in the urban markets. They have to, move back home and find a way to, get to a lower cost of living. And that to me is one of the things that worries me the most about luxury travel and travel in general into the urban markets going forward, is that we've lost such important talent who are the heartbeat of our industry. So exactly.
One last question in closing. There are approximately 6,000 industry professionals that will be watching this panel and the other programs that are being done in Inspire 2020. They need to hear from each of you some advice. So, if I may impose, what advice in closing would you give those individuals to help them get through what is the most unprecedented and challenging time I suspect any of us and any of them will have ever experienced? And if I may, Ruth Ann, I'd like to start with you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I think stick together, rely on each other. The hospitality industry is one of the most amazing industries in that people share so much. Other industries can be a little bit more cutthroat. Competitors in our industry share, they talk to each other, they give advice. I've seen it with a Facebook group that I launched as the pandemic set in, luxury travel, hospitality, professionals helping each other. And the amount of help that's gone on that page is amazing over the past few months. And so ask questions of your colleagues. Don't go into solitude. Get out of bed in the morning, even though, the news has been so much better recently, but there have been times when it's just like, why bother? Rely on each other. And if you need help, raise your hand, because in this industry, there is always somebody here to help. And that is the beauty of our industry.
I couldn't agree with you more. Albert?
Focus on your purpose, helping each other as much in a way that you can help, right? If you look at what hospitality is about, ties in what Ruth Ann said, it's about caring, it's about providing shelter and help. And I think times like this, as tough as it may be, keeping the faith and knowing that we're in this industry, we're in this business because it's what we love and it's what we know. And together we will overcome this as well, sooner rather than later.
Joanne?
I would just say that we have to go from survival mode into creative expansion mode. And in a way, we have to be there before we get there. In other words, it's the time to really look at your product and see what can be done different and looking at it in a creative way. And if you are an urban location, what outdoor space is available that you might be able to bring into your hotel and to be able to use for your guests? Or is there a hiking trail, outside of New York City that might be easy to get to? Are there adventure and creative experiences that could be created to make the product ready for the future? And sometimes it's hard to be in the future and the present at the same time, but we might never have this opportunity. Hopefully we'll not have this opportunity again to be able to look at everything in a fresh way. And it's an important thing to be able to do that at this moment.
I couldn't agree more. David?
Joanne stole my thunder. It was, I think the most important thing to do right now, or what the industry needs to do right now, is we all need to hit the reset button, right? I think we've figured out how to make the guests feel comfortable from a short-term perspective in the cleanliness and sanitation ways. We know how hotels have operated for decades, centuries, right? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to step back and say, why do we do what we do, right? Why do we have certain things in the room? Why do we offer certain services? And more importantly, how do we better engage with the guests going forward? And this is the time. This is the time to, right size, unfortunately, some of the things on the staffing side, to re-empower our employees and reinvigorate them, right? And get creative. There's no such thing as a bad idea right now, right? I think everybody on the team from the heart of the house up, right, needs to have a voice, and they need to be able to, give their opinions on how to improve operations, right? And how to make the experience for the guest better. I think it really, and most importantly, from a staff perspective, right? Be true to who you are and continue learning. Don't hesitate to reach out to anybody and everybody for advice and for guidance, right? Because together we're all going to get through this, and we're going to come back stronger than ever.
And Jamie, you have the last word.
Well, both Joanne and David stole my thunder. So I couldn't agree more with those comments. I think that we all need to be as creative as humanly possible to bring the traveler back. I think it's up to us to create the need and the desire that once existed by doing things differently than we had pre-pandemic. So I would echo the thoughts. Anything that we can all do to be creative to make travel happen again, I think is going to get us out of this much quicker than waiting for travel to return to pre-pandemic. It's a new world, and we got to embrace it and create it and create the demand again.
I would really, from the bottom of my heart, like to thank all of you for speaking your heart, speaking your head, giving us a reason and a path forward and how to achieve that path forward. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I wish we had more because we could go on for a much longer period of time. This has been an enlightening, informative, and inspiring conversation. Thank you so very much. I'd also like to thank the ILHA, as well as all of you who are watching this panel today, because we need all of you to be to benefit from what's been said today and to carry the message forward. If you have any questions, please let the ILHA know, and we will make every effort to answer them. Thank you very much. Please stay well and safe. Goodbye.